A spike in COVID-19 cases in Florida hasn't stopped people from flocking to South Beach to get some sun. The state, seen possibly as the next U.S. epicenter, reported a record 9,500 cases on Saturday. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the government's top advisor on the pandemic, says a surge in some southern and western states could be due to opening up a little bit too early. The Centers for Disease Control says the spike is also being driven by young people who test positive but are asymptomatic. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has tightened restrictions, ordering bars to shut.
President Trump is known for playing well-known pop and rock hits at his rallies. But the Rolling Stones say they don't want their songs on his political playlist. The band issued a statement on Saturday saying they're working with performing rights organisation BMI to stop what they called the unauthorised use of their music. They warned that further use could result in a lawsuit for, quote, playing music that has not been licensed. The statement said the Trump campaign had been notified of their intentions and that previous, quote, cease and desist directives had been ignored. The band's hit, You Can't Always Get What You Want, has repeatedly been played at President Trump's rallies. Back in 2016, Trump's then presidential campaign played the 1969 hit at least 4 times before a rally in Indiana.
With an overwhelming vote of 85 to 35, Mississippi lawmakers voted in favor of efforts to change their state's flag. The current flag, adopted in 1894, features the Confederate battle banner. Saturday's resolution passed in the House will allow lawmakers to consider a bill to change the flag. Since Saturday's resolution required a larger majority than the bill itself, the new flag is all but guaranteed.
The U.S. is on edge. Protests against racial inequality and police brutality have hit more than a dozen cities, triggered by the death of George Floyd a month ago. Statues of divisive figures, such as Confederate leaders or those who defended slavery, have been toppled or vandalized. Now, President Donald Trump has signed an executive order to protect such monuments. He announced the signing of the order on Twitter, saying it'll combat recent criminal violence, while warning of long prison terms for what he called lawless acts. Trump also said, instead of taking a trip to his golf course in New Jersey this weekend, he decided to stay in Washington, D.C. to make sure law and order is enforced.
Violence against women is nothing new in Colombia, but a spate of recent cases has people reeling. Despite a coronavirus lockdown, these protesters took to the streets, saying they can't turn their backs on women being attacked and killed at a pace that the pandemic seems to have made worse. While crime rates have fallen in the country during the quarantine, violence against women has increased by 8.6%. Activists say at least 315 women have been killed since the beginning of the year. At least 110 of these murders are femicides, with the victims killed because of their gender.
Iceland, which has a population of just 365,000, went to the polls to elect a new president on Saturday. It's the second state to hold an election during the coronavirus outbreak, and the incumbent Gudni Johannesson is expected to easily win a second term in office. He's a champion of LGBT rights and has been seen picking up litter near his residence. His opponent, Gudmunda Franklin Jonsson, is a fan of US President Donald Trump and in 2010 founded a right-wing populist movement which he led for 3 years. He wants the president to exercise more power by vetoing more legislation, and he's described the vote as a choice between an active president and an inactive president. Although the post is mostly symbolic, the president does have the power to veto legislation, but that's only ever been done on 3 occasions.
Never before has this much weight been lifted to this height. A beam weighing 155 tonnes delicately guided into position, 318 metres above the turquoise waters off the Turkish coast. They're the finishing touches to what now stand as monuments to modern engineering and symbols of Australian success. The pillars will eventually support the world's longest suspension bridge, linking the European and Asian sides of Turkey. 4,608 metres long, it will turn a 90-minute ferry ride into a 6-minute drive.
In Russia, the Scarlet Sails Festival in honour of school graduates has taken place in St. Petersburg. The annual event is marked by a spectacular fireworks show, numerous musical performances and a huge water display. Although still impressive, the show was different this year as it had to take place under strict health precautions due to coronavirus. There were no spectators, and rather than sail the waters in the city centre, a ship with scarlet sails had to take to the Gulf of Finland. Concert and shows were broadcast on television for millions of graduates across Russia.
Tonight, a massive cloud of dust is on the move, and it's choking parts of the South this weekend, from Florida beaches to Texas skylines. Nicknamed Godzilla for its size, the monster weather event hasn't happened in half a century. This photograph from space shows it leaving the Sahara Desert a week ago, traveling 5,000 miles, coating the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico with a layer of dry, dusty air. A normally sunny day in Puerto Rico turned hazy. The dust also darkened skies in Cuba. The tiny particles leading to poor air quality and threatening those with respiratory issues. In COVID-19 hotspots like Houston, the air pollution is mixing with a pandemic. But there is a bright spot with this phenomenon: spectacular sunsets after a day filled with dust.
It's a name the president often invokes when talking about American heroes.
Harriet Tubman, Harriet Tubman, Harriet Tubman.
But the president has stopped short of memorializing her heroism by replacing Andrew Jackson on the front of one of our most widely circulated currency notes, the $20 bill.
I think it's pure political correctness. Andrew Jackson had a great history, and I think it's very rough when you take somebody off the bill.
First, speaking of history, President Andrew Jackson was a slaveholder and signed legislation removing Native Americans from their land. Nevertheless, Trump has long admired Jackson, visiting his home in Nashville.
I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
And moving his portrait to the Oval Office, where he even hosted a group of Navajo veterans right in front of that painting.
You were here long before any of us were here.
Second, no one sought to remove Andrew Jackson from the bill entirely. A redesigned bill simply moves him to the back of the bill and features Harriet Tubman on the front.